Empire of Leonia. The moonlight flooded the room, falling directly on the coffin that stood on the dais. The people sat with their heads down sadly. A funeral was being held at the imperial palace deep in the night. Standing by the coffin and inhaling the smell of the flowers brought for the funeral, the man began his farewell speech. He addressed the guests, noting that it was very sad and heartbreaking for everyone here. However, the man asked to put the sadness behind them. The princess has gone to God, to a better place, and all they have to do is accept this hard reality. The culprit of the celebration, Princess Leonarf Aristella, disappeared from the imperial palace about 6 months ago. The whole country was shocked by this sudden disappearance, and since the body was never found, the funeral was decided to be held without it. One of the guests yawned sleepily, covering her mouth with her hand. The other immediately reprimanded her, urging her to watch herself. How could one yawn at such a moment? But the woman couldn't help herself. It was so tiring. The boy sitting in the front asked his mom if what people were saying was true. They claimed as if the princess liked to create trouble, but the woman only shushed him, urging him to sit quietly, leaving the question unanswered. Among the mourners present, there was no one who truly mourned the death of Princess Aristella, not even the princess's brother, the ruler of Emeria Leonia. Most of them were only thinking about when it would finally end. Somewhat surprisingly, even Princess Aristella herself watched the formal funeral proceedings. Watching the feigned bitter sighs and tired yawns, the princess thought to herself that she had expected something like this, but still she hadn't thought it would be this cheesy. One of the guests at the funeral turned round to stretch his stiff neck when he noticed a snow-white fox sitting on the seat. He was surprised at what he saw and could not understand what a fox was doing in such a place. Indeed, she looked like that now, and that's how others saw her. If she had told anyone about it, they probably wouldn't have believed her. Princess Aristella has turned into a fox. Princess Aristella learnt of her amazing abilities as a child. The Leonia Empire had been blessed in the past, just as the girl herself had been blessed as a child. A feast was being held in the palace. The assembled guests remarked that this banquet was a real honor for the imperial family. Today it was even more grandiose, for the princess was present with them today. The woman sternly ordered the girl not to run. She reminded her that she should be more graceful at banquets. But the girl only threw back a short aha and ran off into the distance. The little girl ran between the tables, marveling at how many people were there. The guests were also paying attention to the little girl, because it was Princess Aristella herself. The guests couldn't help but notice how sweet and elegant the princess was, a true pride of the empire. Aristella was glad that all these guests had come to see her. She liked to feel like the main character. At one point, Aristella was so enthralled with her first imperial banquet that she stopped looking where she was running, accidentally bumping into a servant who was just bringing out a grandiose ice statue. The guests froze with shock as they watched what had happened. The sculpture only tilted slightly and froze in midair. The guests thought that it was someone's magic that saved the young princess. But the girl knew it wasn't an outside force. She could feel it within her. Aristella waved her hand and the statue flew up, obeying her wish. That day, the girl verified it with her own experience. It was as if the generous earth itself had given Princess Aristella grace, and from birth, everything was in her hands. The guests were delighted. Some said that it was a blessing of the empire. Others assured that such a great power of the princess was a gift. Others asked the princess to say something about what had happened. It was a blessing that would not happen again. Turning to the guests, the little princess promised that anyone who threatened the Leonia Empire would be destroyed by her power. Aristella was certain that her future life's journey should be filled with nothing but happiness and abundance, and all because she was the genius of the century. The girl told her mother about it, and asked if she thought so too. The woman said with a smile that she was not sure, because she had heard that the princess had written 3 dictations wrong today. The girl pouted. She wasn't talking about that after all. She was talking about being a wizard. Aristella confidently declared that tomorrow she would write all the dictations with honors. Her mother smiled affectionately, noting that it was time for her to go to bed. The girl was so pleased with herself that she couldn't fall asleep. But then she was suddenly afraid. Her strength was overflowing. Already asleep, Aristella decided that she would become the greatest sorceress in the empire. She would be a magician who would be praised by everyone.
Suddenly, the girl felt herself falling into a void. She was gripped by fear. She didn't understand what was happening, what these records that appeared around her were. Soon, the memories came over Aristella like waves. The girl noticed that she had seen it before. It was her past life.
Then Aristella lived in a completely different world, and then died unexpectedly. The girl decided it didn't make sense. She couldn't believe that she had been reborn as the protagonist of a novel she had read in a past life.
The girl suddenly realized a terrible fact. If everything really happens as in the novel, then at the age of 18 she will receive a terrible curse, life and death in universal hatred.
Aristella could not believe that if her life was like in the novel, she would be cursed with a terrible curse at the age of 18. Based on the plot of the novel, at the age of 18, she would be cursed to be loved by no one. However, no one in the imperial family knew about the existence of such a curse, and so in order to survive, the girl had to find out for herself. The curse seemed to have been placed on the imperial family a long time ago. Aristella didn't understand why she was the one to fall under it. The girl thought it was because she was the only known wizard in the family's history. Aristella didn't want to end her life alone, and thanks to the novel, she already knew what would happen in the future. Their engagement was only a formality. Even though they had been childhood friends, now Aristella wasn't even sure he would help her with her misunderstanding. Come to think of it, as a child Henrian loved animals, so Aristella decided first to pretend to be a fox that had wandered off and joined him. She decided it would never be too late to tell him what had happened. The boy will be angry when he finds out he's been tricked, but it can't be helped. If Henrian doesn't come, all of Aristella's plan will go to waste.
Looking carefully for the boy, Aristella kept wondering why he wasn't there. She was sure he should come at least once.
Power, fame, wealth. Everything that Aristella gave away was useless. So she decided that in such a case, it was better not to wish for anything. So in her second life, Aristella gave up hope of being loved. She decided that if she gave up love, she would still have power, money, and fame. Even if there is no one who will love her, there will be no one who can resist her. Therefore, the princess of the Leonarf Empire, Aristella, has become someone that everyone should avoid.
Aristella became the perpetrator of all accidents to those who caused trouble. She became an arrogant and unlucky lonely child.
But the more they hated Aristella, the stronger she became, and grew to be the most prominent mage in the empire. One day, when Aristella was once again busy causing trouble for the imperial family, her parents died unexpectedly. It was soon revealed that dark mages were behind the death of Aristella's parents, and they ended up targeting the empire. Aristella gave up on being loved, but she didn't give up on the people she loved herself. The girl decided that she would make everyone behind it regret what they had done.
However, it would be extremely difficult for the princess of the empire to pursue the dark magicians who had vast experience behind them. Therefore, in the end, in order to keep an eye on them, Aristella concealed her identity by turning into a fox.
That day, as usual, Aristella took on the form of a fox to chase the mages, but found herself on the brink of death due to an accident. After overcoming the crisis and opening her eyes, Aristella realized that she could not assume her human form again. Within 6 months, Aristella had tried everything to transform back, but the fox form had its limitations, so none of it had the desired result. And the long absence of the princess turned out to be the news of her death, so a formal funeral was held. Aristella had heard that there was to be a funeral for her, so she had come hoping that she would be able to find out something. But what Aristella could never have guessed was such terrible wires. Pushing the sad thoughts aside, Aristella decided that now was not the time for that. She had to find a way to get back into her body, to protect the honor of her late parents, tainted by black magic, and the safety of the entire Leonia Empire. Hiding the cause of her parents' death and secretly pursuing dark mages was simply impossible in the guise of a fox. So Aristella needed to return to her human form as soon as possible. Since in half a year, Aristella had never been able to change anything, she decided that surely there must be another way. She realized that there was only one person who could help her become a real fox. This man was Aristella's fiancé, Archduke Henrian Canon Adelasia. Grand Duke Adelasia was from a family that had specialized in applied magic for centuries, so Aristella thought he should have records of rare magical occurrences. Aristella decided that she needed to find information about what was happening to her at Adelasia's house. Aristella examined herself again from head to toe. The problem was Henrian,
and the girl was in no position to do anything about it.
Rolling from side to side in anticipation of Henrian, Aristella decided that the guy must really hate the girl, since he hadn't even deigned to come to her funeral.
The moon was already haloed in the sky. With her head down sadly, she jumped off the seat and headed out of the room. She didn't know what she was hoping for. Already completely despairing of the possibility of her plan coming to fruition, Aristella slowly waddled towards the exit when she noticed a man walking past her. When she looked up, she was shocked to see that it was Henrian.
The boy walked over to the huge portrait of Aristella that hung on the wall. He still couldn't believe that she was really dead. Aristella wasn't one of those people who died easily. He was just putting flowers by the coffin when he heard someone calling him. Henrian looked around and thought he was beginning to hallucinate.
The boy clenched his hands into fists, listening. It wasn't a hallucination, but Aristella's real voice. Henrian turned round, listening. Only a white fox stood nearby. Aristella was glad that the boy had turned round when he heard her voice. She kept trying to tell him it was her. Sion stood looking at the strange fox. Aristella rejoiced, not believing he recognized her.
Sion remembered sitting in the garden as a child, crying because Aristella had tricked him again. He had lost something very important.
The boy felt something fluffy rubbing against him. When he turned round, he saw a beautiful white fox. Sion was surprised at the suggestion that the fox was comforting him. However, when they were taken by surprise, the fox disappeared. The boy could not understand what kind of fox it was. Sion kept looking at the fox. Aristella was almost jumping on the spot, trying to tell the boy that she was the fox he had seen as a child. The boy kept looking at the fox, not believing that it was the same fox from his childhood. Aristella was afraid that Sion didn't recognize her.
Aristella decided there was nothing left for her to do but employ a cute strategy. As she approached Henrian, she rubbed against his leg. The boy decided that it looked like the fox wanted him to take her with him. Aristella was overjoyed. This was exactly what she wanted.
Sion smirked, wondering what would happen if he didn't want it. Aristella decided that at this rate, they would definitely go crazy.
Aristella began to wind circles around the guy. Sion was surprised. He thought the fox was trying to seduce him.
Aristella was shocked by this statement. She had no intention of seducing him, she begged the boy. Sion grabbed the fox by the scruff of the neck, lifting him off the floor.
Aristella immediately started lashing out, thinking the guy was a real brute. She couldn't believe that he had just grabbed her by the scruff of the neck and ordered her to let go immediately.
The boy took the fox in his arms, lulling it like a baby. Sion decided that since the animal wanted it so much, he would take it with him. Aristella couldn't believe it. Aristella was of course glad that the guy would take her with him, but she found it odd that he was so quick to agree to it. They traveled to Henrian's house in a luxurious carriage. The fox was curled up on the seat, dozing, and the boy was looking at the scenery outside the window, reflecting on the events of the last few days.
When Aristella went missing, Henrian suspended his activities as Archduke and led a search in the Frutu area where Aristella disappeared. However, no matter how hard he tried, not a single trace or clue had been found in 6 months.
Suddenly and unexpectedly, they decide to hold a funeral without finding the body. Henrian was extremely surprised by this. He did not understand what had happened to Aristella in the meantime.
When the spires of the castle began to loom on the horizon, the boy ordered the fox to wake up, because they had already arrived. When the spires of the castle began to loom on the horizon, the boy ordered the fox to wake up, for they had already arrived. Taking the fox by the scruff of the neck and noticing its surprised look, the boy said he was going to buy it back.
Aristella didn't like the idea, so she protested and tried to get away. Henrian didn't pay any attention to this, but continued to drag the fox into the bathroom, saying how dirty she was. Aristella was horrified. She did not understand why it was Henrian who had to wash her himself and not the maid. The first thing she felt when she woke up was the warm and soft blanket. She thought that she had managed to return to her body, but that thought was not successful. When she rolled over on her side, she noticed Sion sleeping peacefully at her side. Aristella was shocked by what she saw. She didn't understand why Henrian had chosen to sleep in the same bed with the fox.
After pulling herself together and calming down a bit, Aristella decided that even though she was still in the body of a fox, getting into the Archduke's house was already a great success.
It was also very nice for Aristella to feel clean. However, the girl did not want to suffer any more of the humiliation she had experienced yesterday. Aristella was furious that Henrian was treating her, the noblest princess in the empire, like dirty laundry.
As punishment, Aristella crawled closer to the guy, poking him in the cheek with her paw. When she noticed that the boy was beginning to wake up, Aristella immediately rolled onto her other side, pretending to be asleep. When Xion woke up, he couldn't understand why his cheeks were burning.
Frowning, Aristella decided that the boy was a softie. She'd pressed it lightly, and he'd woken up. Shifting a suspicious glance to the fox, the boy hesitated. Aristella was afraid that he might have guessed it was her.
Deciding to pretend that she knew nothing and was just sound asleep, the fox closed her eyes even more tightly, trying to make as nonchalant a face as possible.
Reaching for the fox, Sion, to Aristella's great surprise, covered it with a blanket so that it wouldn't accidentally fall ill. The girl was shocked by such an act. When the guy left, Aristella was surprised that that was it. She decided that she had only worried for nothing. Sprawled out on the bed, the girl realized how much she missed the soft blanket. It had been so hard on her all this time, so she needed a good rest.
As she dozed off, she was awakened by the excited chatter of the servants, who marveled at the presence of the fox in the room. One of them noted the amazing snow-white fur of the animal. Aristella grudgingly grimaced at how noisy the room had become. The maids were talking among themselves, deciding what to do, for his lordship was not particularly fond of animals. He especially disliked foxes. Aristella was shocked. She was surprised to hear that the boy hated foxes.
She could not believe it, for she remembered that Henrian had loved animals ever since he was a child. He liked foxes best of all, so he never hunted them, even in hunting competitions. And even now, Sion was happy to see the fox and even let Aristella into his home. The maids, meanwhile, were deciding what to do. One of them wondered if his lordship would be angry about it. Another said that the animal would have to be thrown out anyway. Aristella was furious at this statement. She didn't understand where she was going to be thrown out and declared that he was staying here. And anyway, they should have asked Henrian before making such decisions. Aristella realized that if she was thrown out, she would once again have to live a hard life on the streets like before. Moreover, the girl's plan was to go through all the magic books in this house. She couldn't just be thrown out like that.
The maids kept arguing about what to do. One of them suggested reporting it to the butler, and the others agreed, thinking it was a good idea. But they noticed that someone would have to stay with the fox. One of the girls good-naturedly agreed to inform the butler. The others were very grateful to her for this, and said that they would stay with the fox for the time being.
As soon as the maid disappeared behind the door, the other three immediately stared at the fox. It made Aristella tense up. She didn't understand why they were staring at her and what they were going to do.
The maids suddenly began to praise the fox with one voice. They called it a beauty and admired its snow-white coat, calling it like a snowball. One of the girls confessed that it was the first time she had seen such a wonderful fox. Aristella was proud that the maids had fallen for her beauty. She remembered that Henrian too had been a child when he first saw the girl turn into a fox and couldn't take his eyes off her. So he spent the whole day cuddled up to the fox and decided to raise it himself. As the maids gawked at the fox, they couldn't resist touching and stroking it. Aristella was not happy about this decision. Ironically, the moment the unknown man touched Aristella, she remembered the two people she loved most in the world.
Aristella remembered her father taking her in his arms to see how she had grown, and each time he talked about how his little Lala had grown noticeably heavier. She remembered her father hugging her gently and asking who had her so beautiful. Aristella remembered lying in bed with her parents and her mom gently stroking her tummy to make it stop hurting until it went away. Suddenly in the arms of the maid, Aristella wondered if her parents were alive, if they would have recognized her even in the guise of a fox. The girl missed them so much. She was thinking about her own thoughts and didn't notice when she was roughly snatched out of the maid's arms. When she looked up, she saw that it was Henrian. Aristella squirmed imperceptibly in his arms with embarrassment. Sion looked at her with a frown, and the girl stirred, not understanding why he was looking at her like that. Aristella was afraid that she might actually be kicked out.
Looking at the maids with a frown, Sion announced that this fox was his pet from today.
Aristella thought it was good news, though she didn't understand where Sion got the urge. She thought about how life changed depending on how the maids perceived you.
Suddenly jumping on the guy's shoulder, Aristella really wanted him to introduce her to his subordinates as a very important fox.
However, Henrian did not live up to the girl's expectations, presenting her as a fox that constantly causes trouble and has an extremely nasty character. Aristella was about to take offense at the guy for his rude words towards her, but then Sion added that it was also the fox, whom he valued very much and would not give offense to.
Fortunately for Aristella, everything ended well. She stubbornly decided that she needed to stay here and find a way to become human again as soon as possible. Rowan, Henrision's close aide, looked incredulously at the plump fox that had been sitting in the Archduke's study when he had arrived there. He could not believe that it was the very fox that Sion had personally raised.
Rowan jabbed his finger unhappily at the fox, about to begin his moralizing. Aristella rolled her eyes in frustration, wondering why Sion's assistant was being so rude. Rowan remarked that the fox had come from nowhere. He also noted, pointing to the many bite marks on Henrian's arm, that this animal had no respect for its master.
The aide noted that it was better not to approach such animals and suggested that Sion find a more worthy fox for him. Aristella noticed that the boy was testing her patience.
Henrian agreed that the fox showed no respect for its master at all and had a terrible temper. But no sooner had Aristella taken offense at his words than the lad added that there was nothing to be done about it, for it was his fox now.
Now it was his fox, and Henrian could not give his fox to anyone else.
Henrian acknowledged, gently poking Aristella's nose with his finger, that this fox was a troublemaker and a tomboy, but he was feeding and raising her well.
In spite of her words, Aristella didn't like the guy touching her, so she bit his finger with all her might. Rowan turned pale with horror, immediately wondering if his master was all right. But Sion didn't seem surprised, and only replied that the fox was just thanking him for his concern. Concerned, Rowan once again asked if his master wanted to keep the fox when it behaved like this, but Henrian only replied with a short yes.
Henrian confessed that a fox that was very dear to him had once been taken away, but this time it had come to him. He noted that the fox was definitely his now. Aristella could not believe her ears. She hadn't realized that Sion still remembered the incident.
The fox that was taken from Sion was Aristella, but Henrian did not know that it was the girl who had turned into that fox. She thought it was just a temporary feeling, but it was serious. Rowan added that he had something else to report. The boy said that a marriage had recently been discovered that had been arranged using taboo magic. Aristella immediately became animated when she heard the news. This was finally what Aristella had been waiting for. She was about to dive headfirst into dark magic. While Rowan asked for permission to begin the report, Aristella decided that if she got closer to the aide, she could get more of the information she needed.
But the problem with the girl's plan was that Rowan didn't trust her, so it was difficult for her to get close to him. Meanwhile, some girl approached the guy, reporting that they had found additional evidence. She would sort it out and give it to Rowan. Aristella thought about the fact that maybe she should get closer to this girl. She slipped out of the room almost unnoticed after the girl, but the fox was still thinking about how to talk to her. Aristella was worried that she might not like her as much as Rowena did. Aristella wished that everyone she met would stop hating her. Ono shivered at the thought. If the girl wanted to get clues from the dark mage, she needed to act.
When she noticed the fox, the girl stopped immediately, smiling contentedly. She stepped closer to Aristella, leaning in and asking the fox if she was following her. Taking the vixen in her arms, the girl noted that she looked even cuter up close. Taking the fox in her arms and lulling it like a baby, the girl offered to go with her. Aristella was surprised at what she was able to do.
She asked the fox if he was hungry, noting that it was soon lunchtime. She was so engrossed in her conversation with the lovely animal that she did not notice Henrian standing behind her.
There were only leftovers on the plates. The fox was lying on his back, his belly full, and his belly up. Aristella noted that her belly was full, and she hadn't been this full in a long time. Aristella was supposed to be looking for magic clues, but suddenly she got full. But the girl decided that before looking for them, she should have a good meal and gain strength. Besides, she was in the body of a fox, so she could stop worrying about royal manners for a while.
Suddenly, Aristella was drawn into a conversation between two maids. They were discussing the fact that the master had eaten well today, which surprised them. One of them added that the butler had almost cried because of it. She didn't understand why the maids were so surprised that Sion ate all the food, as he had eaten quite normally before. She couldn't help but notice that he ate relatively less than she did, because she liked to eat.
The butler really couldn't hold back his tears when he noticed that his lordship had eaten everything. The man thought it was all thanks to the fox.
The butler asked the lord if he had already chosen a name for the fox, noting that they couldn't just call her Fox all the time. Sion's reaction suggested that he hadn't even thought about it yet. Henrian, however, was interested in the idea. As he came closer to Aristella, who was sprawled on the sofa, he wondered what name would suit her. A maid passing by noted that she had heard that animals had different personalities depending on their name, though she wasn't sure if the gentleman would believe in such superstitions. Smiling enigmatically, Sion decided that he definitely needed to think hard about the name then.
The servants and butler standing nearby were shocked that the Archduke smiled, for he hardly ever smiles. They decided that it was all thanks to the fox. One of the maids wished the vixen a good name, while Aristella herself was sure that Sion was sure to give her some strange name. After calling Aristella a foxy rogue and stroking her head affectionately, Sion decided that he would give her the name Fluffy. The girl disliked this name intensely.
Henrian thought the name suited the vixen, for she was still very young, but she didn't like the name, which she was quick to demonstrate by clawing at his wrist with her teeth. After some more thought, Henrian suggested another name for the fox, Lala. Aristella was shocked by such a suggestion. The girl thought about the fact that maybe the guy had realized that she was Lala. Lala was Aristella's nickname, given to her by her family as a child.
As an exception, Henrian had once called Aristella that. The girl couldn't believe it and thought it was just a coincidence.
The girl was very much surprised. She did not understand why Henrian was looking at her so intently.
Aristella immediately thought the boy an idiot, for he appeared to know everything. Henrian asked her what the reason for her secret visit was. Aristella noted that the guy was interrogating her like a criminal. Sion asked if she had thought about the fact that he wouldn't find out.
Henrian noted that the princess' reputation seemed to have faded since she couldn't even hide her identity now. Aristella was upset. She hadn't sorted out all the black mage business yet, after all. It was not in the girl's plans to be exposed so quickly. She didn't understand what the problem was. Sion noted that it had been so long ago that Aristella didn't remember. He remembered their conversation when they were still children. The girl had been very surprised when Henrian had said that he wanted a fox that lived in the garden. Aristella noted then that this was not a fox he would dare raise. But the boy had noticed her eyes then. Golden ones. Come to think of it, they looked exactly the same as the fox's. That this fox was Aristella, he knew even then, as a little boy. But she had always tried to hide from him.
Sion noted that Aristella was very proud, since she had come to him like this to find something he had that the girl didn't.
Henrian suggested that it could be something his family has been researching for a very long time, such as magic and magical artifacts, including dark mages.
Sion shared that he found traces of black magic in the Frutu area, where Aristella went missing.
Henrian surmised that this was the reason why Aristella looked like this now, and that's why she'd come to his mansion to get her real face back.
Henrian realized that it was useless to ask the girl, as she kept everything a secret all the time. But Sion promised that since Aristella was in the Archduchy, he wouldn't let her go. The girl didn't understand why the jerk was so cruel. Since the fox could not speak, Henrian asked Aristella to write about what had happened, and he would read it and decide what to do with it next.
With a knock, Rowan entered the room, warning that he would only be a moment. Aristella immediately perked up. He had no idea how happy she was to see him.
Approaching Henrian, Rowan informed him that they had important business to attend to, namely a visit from the Marquis of Havlin, along with his guardian Patrick. Sion replied that it was then time for them to meet. The Marquis of Havlin's heir, Leighton Havlin, was a nephew of Henrian, who was born to the marriage of his half-brother Daryl and sister-in-law, the Marquis Olivia Havlin. However, an accident a year ago killed them, and Leighton was the sole successor. Since Leighton was not yet 15, he needed a guardian, and that person was Patrick, the one who arrived with Leighton today. Aristella noted that this guy, Patrick, had been spotted by her 6 months ago bullying Leighton, so she didn't understand at all why he was still his guardian.
Aristella couldn't believe that Patrick was still by Leighton's side. It simply couldn't be. The girl was determined to deal with Henrian later. Right now she had to help Leighton. Aristella realized that Sion didn't trust her at all, so she needed to find someone else to help her.
Noticing Anessa in the corridor, the girl decided that this was the best option. Running up to the girl, Aristella tried to let her know that she needed her help, but Anessa decided that the vixen wanted a hug. The man the girl was talking to noted that it looked like Sir Patrick was trying to use that incident as an excuse to prevent His Grace from taking Leighton away.
Anessa shared that she didn't understand why His Grace the Archduke should be held responsible for what Her Highness the Princess had done. Sitting in the girl's arms, Aristella had no idea what he had done. Anessa added that if the princess hadn't broken Sir Patrick's leg just for fun, he could have safely taken Leighton with him. Now Aristella remembered the incident. It was 6 months ago, when the girl had decided to test Leighton Havlin's magical power.
The kid tried his best, but as soon as Patrick touched him, Leighton's magic became extremely unstable. Patrick sternly ordered the boy to do the right thing, and not to dishonor his family. Aristella didn't like it very much. Later, approaching the man, she noted that Patrick's treatment of the future head of the family was simply unacceptable.
With something like a wry grin on his face, Patrick replied that he didn't know what the girl was talking about. After all, he was looking after the boy with such sincerity. The man noted that although Aristella was a princess, she was overstepping her bounds now. To put it mildly, he was an arsehole who couldn't be reasoned with, so Aristella decided to use force. Just by looking at the changes in Leighton's magic power, she could tell he was being abused. But instead of repenting, Patrick spread such a false rumor about the princess. Aristella could no longer stand by and just wait. She wouldn't let him get away this time. Aristella was very lucky. 2 servants were standing at the ajar door, arguing about cleaning the carpets, which gave her a chance to slip inside the room.
The fox found herself inside a huge room with tall, fully stocked shelves of books. It was Archduke Adelasia's magical laboratory. When Aristella was still young, she liked to create magic items often, and then she used to hide inside this magic lab. Aristella was afraid that this item would be banned as particularly dangerous, so she hid it in a hidden corner of the lab.
Aristella was glad she hadn't thrown it away then. She had never thought she would ever use it for such a purpose.
Placing his hand firmly on the boy's shoulder, Patrick admitted that he thought it was only natural that the future Marquis of Havlin should be brought up by the Havlin family. The man added that such interference by the Adelasia family in the affairs of the Havlin family no longer seemed to him to be done out of the goodness of his heart.
Henrian noticed that as soon as he wanted to help Leighton, Patrick started to speak the same words. Sion suggested that the man think about that suggestion again. Sion pointed out that magic was a rare gift. A systematic education at the academy would benefit the Marquis of Havlin. Patrick countered that the strength of the Havlin family was not in magic, but in swordsmanship, so the boy would be raised according to the path that was chosen by his family. Patrick urged Henrian to stop any of his manipulations in this matter from now on. However, Henrian has noticed that Leighton is not capable of becoming a knight. The boy was born with magical powers as his father once was, and therefore unfortunately has a very weak body.
There were only 2 options left for Henrian now. Either he would respect the Havlin family's opinion and step aside, or he would forcefully take Leighton away and send him to the academy to study.
Sion asked Sir Patrick if he was going to change his mind. The man replied by suggesting that his lordship change his mind. Henrian sighed heavily, realizing how difficult a conversation he was about to have. Turning his head, he noticed the fox entering the room. It surprised him a little. Sion did not understand why Aristella had decided to visit them now, but the girl paid no attention to Henrian's surprised face as she strode proudly to Patrick and jumped on his lap, much to Leighton's surprise. Patrick said it was a very nice fox, though he thought about something else entirely. The Leonia Empire believed that the more animals they raised, the better their reputation, so no matter how disgusting a creature was, it wouldn't be thrown away.
Patrick stroked the fox's fur, hitting it rather painfully on the head a few times, ostensibly playing with it. Aristella frowned and squirmed, calling Patrick a jerk.
Watching Aristella's behavior, Henrian wondered what the girl was even thinking right now. She was literally being abused after all.
Patrick asked what kind of fox it was, and Sion replied that it was an animal that was sheltered at the mansion. Aristella, meanwhile, tried to climb on the man's shoulder, which made the man chuckle and remark that the fox liked him a lot, adding that he must be better than the Archduke.
Henrian continued to glare at the girl, not realizing what she was doing, but Aristella only hissed back at him, ordering him to sit silent and watch, for it was in his interest to do so. Henrian noticed that the girl seemed to have a plan, so he decided to wait and see what would happen next.
Aristella climbed onto the man's shoulder, pawing through his hair, though Patrick chuckled and asked her to get off. She decided that if he didn't do anything to Leighton, nothing would happen.
However, the girl noted that if Patrick tried to hurt the boy even a little, the mark she left on his neck would create a violent reaction.
Finished with her business, Aristella abruptly left Patrick alone, making him look surprised, and jumped onto Henrian's lap. Patrick pointed out that this fox was unmanageable and had no manners at all. Growling menacingly, Aristella replied that the man was the only one here with no manners. Patrick noted in his mind that the fox was exactly like its master. The man went to the couch and announced that they were finished with their business, so he and Leighton were leaving, ordering the boy to get up immediately. As Patrick passed Henrian to leave the room, he quietly warned the man to be careful, for they weren't done yet, so he would be back.
In a displeased tone, Patrick warned him one last time that if the Archduke didn't stop prying, the man would be sent to the Imperial Palace, not the Archduke's mansion. Sitting in Henrian's arms, the fox snorted unhappily. You'd think the Imperial family would be able to protect Patrick? The girl found it hilarious.
Leighton seemed to speak for the first time during this meeting, saying goodbye to everyone. It made Aristella remember that she still had business to attend to with this little one.
Jumping from the boy's arms, Aristella walked towards Leighton, asking him not to leave. As if hearing her, the boy asked if she was talking to him. The fox asked him to sit down. Covering the boy's palms with her paws, the fox promised that on behalf of Princess Aristella Renaud Leonarf, she would, by all means, fulfill any of Leighton's requests later when he was in need.
After waving goodbye to Leighton with her paw, Aristella decided that everything had gone perfectly, and the preparations were complete. The device attached to Patrick was also attached to Leighton's ankle. Now they had to wait for a real adult to help Leighton. The most adult individual of the Havlins is Sophia Havlin. She actually makes all the decisions in regards to the Havlins and is a respected person of the clan.
She is cold and reserved. She's even cold to her only grandson, Leighton. But she's not the kind of person who would stand idly by if she heard about Patrick's misdeeds. Aristella promised herself that she would punish the man.
Aristella didn't understand why the back of her neck felt so hot. She decided it was because of her mood.
Suddenly, Henrian, who was standing nearby, grabbed the fox by the scruff of the neck, which startled her. The girl immediately began to show her displeasure by flicking her paws in the air, ordering the boy not to grab her so sharply anymore. Henrian couldn't get enough of what Aristella had put on Patrick. He asked the fox if she had stolen it from the magic lab. Aristella said that he should let her go first, and then they could talk. Instead, Henrian only squeezed her cheeks, giving her one last chance to tell the truth. Henrian knew what I was using that thing for too, didn't he? He wondered. If Patrick Havlin could do this.
Aristella was sure that Sion had seen it too. Showing on herself where she had marked them, the girl assured him that now the man would not dare to lay a finger on Leighton. So Henrian should hurry up and send a letter to the Marquis of Havlin as soon as possible. Leighton admitted that he was very sorry for his unacceptable behavior today. But Patrick sternly pointed out that misbehavior must be followed by punishment. Clamming up, the boy wondered if Patrick would beat him today as well. Swinging round, the man ordered him to shut his mouth before someone heard them. Leighton was scared. He wanted to stop being beaten. The boy begged for someone to help him. Suddenly, Patrick stopped before he could strike. It was as if the man just froze, unable to lower his arm.
Patrick flew backwards, settling exhaustedly on the floor. The mark on Leighton's ankle glowed.
Patrick decided that the ungrateful little bastard was using his little tricks to play a trick on him. He wondered who told him to do it, maybe the smug Archduke. Leighton was frightened. He didn't know what was happening. The boy assured Patrick that he hadn't done it, but he only told him to shut up, reaching his hand toward Leighton again. This time, however, the same thing happened. The magical wave seemed to be even stronger than the previous one, knocking Patrick into the wall, preventing him from touching Leighton. Coughing a little from the blow, Patrick was furious that the boy had dared to attack him. The man promised that he would teach Leighton a lesson so that he wouldn't think of doing something so stupid in the future.
A commanding female voice suddenly came from the side. When Patrick came to his senses and looked up, he saw Sophia Havlin. The woman gave Patrick a hard look and asked him what right he had to raise his hand against her grandson. The man immediately started to justify himself, saying that she had misunderstood.
Patrick claimed that he hadn't laid a hand on the boy, but Sophia noted that Leighton had told her in vivid color everything that had upset him. What she'd heard had surprised Leighton quite a bit. Leighton tried to assure his grandmother that he hadn't done anything. Patrick kept saying that the future head of the family was lying. He told him that he couldn't avoid responsibility, even if he was still young. Sophia ordered Patrick to shut up immediately. She didn't want to hear it. The woman noted that this magical barrier was meant to harm the enemy. She wondered if Patrick didn't know that it only reacted to danger.
After hugging her grandson, the woman admitted that she had been wrong. She admitted that she had kept her distance so that Leighton would grow up to be a strong man, that he would be able to bear all the burdens of the title of head of the family. But in the end, it had led to this result, and she was sorry for that.
Sophia called for the servants, ordering them to get this scumbag out of here immediately, despite all of Patrick's pleas not to. Fortunately, Sophia rescued Leighton from Patrick, and a few days later, a letter arrived from her.
It was addressed to the dear Archduke Adelasia, and said that thanks to Sion, Sophia had realized her mistake. Patrick had been expelled from the family and punished, and Leighton was now developing his abilities and had entered the Academy of Magic. Whatever power Leighton had, Sophia didn't understand why she hadn't realized then that he was the Marquis of Havlin's unalterable successor. The woman noted that because Leighton had a wise uncle like Henrian instead of her grandmother, they had been able to prevent a major problem, for which she was very grateful. Originally, the thing had been created for little Sion, but it had helped Leighton too. Aristella assumed it was because they were related. Aristella asked the boy if he thought it had ended well because of her. After all, otherwise, who else would have found the artifact and stuck it on Patrick? Aristella asked Sion if he couldn't take her in now. The girl also added that if he kept her, she would help him with everything. Aristella wondered, wasn't that what Henrian had called her for? Sion summarized that the girl had now forbidden herself to be thrown out, for thanks to her everything was well resolved. Henrian gave up, deciding that he would no longer ask Aristella what had happened to her. She could do whatever she wanted from now on.
Aristella was incredibly happy about it. She had done it. She had done a great job. Rowan entered the office with a stack of papers, which he handed to Sion. The aide noted that it was a report on the current circumstances and the search for Her Royal Highness the Princess. Rowan continued that, as Henrian had instructed last time, this was the result of expanding the scope of the search to foreign countries. Aristella was extremely surprised that Sion continued to do all this for her, even when her family would have given up long ago. After a quick glance at the report, Henrian noted that Rowan was doing a great job, but he decided it was necessary to stop the search.
Rowan was surprised at such an order. He reminded his lord that he had ordered the search to continue until they found the princess. Henrian only repeated once more that he was now ordering the search to cease, noting that Rowan could be free. Aristella smiled slyly, watching the guy intently. So it was true, he was looking for her. The girl found this news simply wonderful. When Rowan left, Henrian addressed the fox by name, asking her not to make such a strange expression, and, slightly embarrassed, not to look at him for so long.
But there was nothing Aristella could do about the fact that she was enjoying it so much. She hadn't realized that someone would be looking for her so hard.
Sion was Aristella's fiancé and best friend. All this time, she thought it was only because of her status as a princess. After that incident, their relationship became very different.
So Aristella expected nothing at all from Henrian, but she was very grateful to the boy for seeking her out. Leaning over the fox, Henrian asked Aristella if she thought he wouldn't find her. He surmised that the girl had not only become a fox in appearance, but also in thought. Aristella was angry at first that the bastard had praised her and then insulted her. She was still a little touched, though, because she had been found by someone she would never have thought of. Glancing intently at Henrian, who had gone back to his papers, Aristella wondered if he had always been so handsome. Suddenly, Henrian turned to the girl, startling her greatly. He noted that there was another family besides him looking for Aristella, Count Azurdi. However, a little embarrassed, Sion admitted that he was looking for the most. Aristella was slightly surprised. She didn't understand why that family was looking for her, and besides, she had never heard of her. Although this family is very loyal to the imperial family, they had no contact with Aristella. So why were they trying to find the girl? Aristella assumed they were dark magicians. Then the theory about the reason why they needed to find the girl is justified. Besides, black magic is quite common among the nobility. With a knock, Rowan reappeared in the doorway. Aristella noticed that there was someone else behind the assistant. The girl looked closely at the guest, trying to see if she had seen him before. Rowan introduced the man, indicating that he was the master who would take over the fox's training from now on. Aristella was discouraged by this statement. Rowan added that they had also prepared a leash for the fox, placing it on the table in front of the lord. Aristella was furious, having decided that Sion appeared to be extremely determined. Aristella turned to Sion, accusing him of having thought this all out in advance without letting her know a word about it. Henrian calmly asked Rowan if he had ordered him to do so. The aide replied that he was well aware of his master's concern for the fox, but next time Sion might have a scar on his face rather than on his arm. Aristella was surprised to realize that this idiot was willing to sell her out for any misstep. With a heavy sigh, Henrian acknowledged that since it was a wild animal, it seemed it really wouldn't be unreasonable to tame it. Aristella was shocked at the hunch that Sion was in league with Rowena. However, Henrian ordered the trainer to be sent back. He said that he would take care of the fox himself and did not need a master for that. Bowing respectfully, the master left the office in silence. Rowan worriedly remarked that he understood the master's feelings, but he had to make sure he trained the fox well, for that was the only way he would be at peace. Henrian put his hand out in front of his face, ordering the fox to give his paw. Aristella didn't even move, only glanced at him with a surprised look. Sion repeated his request, but the girl said she was not his puppy. Henrian said that if the fox obeyed him, then he would order a special dish for dinner. When she heard that, she imagined a juicy steak with vegetables. Surrendering, Aristella put her paw into the guy's palm, immediately wondering why he was squeezing it so hard. Henrian was satisfied, ordering the fox to give the paw once more. Rowan marveled that the animal was obeying his grace, and Aristella remarked that they would see who was on the hook yet. Henrian convinced Rowena that the fox was listening to him. Stroking the animal's head, Sion added that if she continued to listen to him, they could stay together without any obstacles. Aristella felt as if she really was a pet fox. Henrian's stroking brought her back to the old days when Sion had followed her around, trailing the girl. Aristella pointed out that if the guy was going to give up halfway through, then he'd better not start at all, but Henrian assured her that he wasn't going to give up. Then Aristella ordered him to follow her, breaking into a run. She noted that Shun was smaller and weaker than she was, and it was hard to defeat her with mere desire. But a year later, Henrian finally managed to catch up with Aristella. With a cheerful smile, Aristella offered her hand to help him up. Henrian was incredulous at the offer, but then he put his hand in hers. Henrian took Aristella's hand and flew up from the ground, surprised at what was happening. The girl said, laughing merrily, that it was a gift for her hard work during the year. Once again, giving her paw to the cheerfully smiling Henrian, Aristella didn't understand how they had come to this. For a princess to give a paw to anyone. Henrian asked Rowan if he could handle training with the fox. The aide agreed, but noted that he would keep an eye on them. Aristella decided that the two of them were simply insufferable. Eventually, everything was resolved. From that moment on, Aristella could stay in the workshop without worrying about the reactions of others. The maids noted that the fox seemed to be in a particularly good mood today. One of the girls remarked that the fox's gait was very cool, informing Aristella that she was a cutie. Aristella was a little surprised by such a statement. From the moment a child begins to walk, they are taught royal etiquette. The girl was surprised that even when the gait is full of grace and dignity, they call it cute. The maids, meanwhile, continued to praise the fox, calling it lovely. One of the girls even confessed that she wanted to take her home with all her heart. Aristella decided that it was a good thing that the people's favor was true to her. She couldn't feel it when she was a princess.
Looking at her reflection in the window pane, Aristella noted that she was beautiful in both human and fox form.
So Aristella decided that cuteness wasn't a bad thing. As she approached the fox, Sion, who was passing by, asked her where she was going in such a hurry. Aristella decided that was the ultimate rudeness, and since it was morning, since she was now the official fox of the duchy, she could go anywhere.
Henrian narrated that Leighton came to say hello before he entered the academy and suggested that Aristella go with him. Upon arriving at the mansion, Leighton immediately happily grabbed the fox, admitting that he had missed the fluffy thing. Aristella didn't understand why she was the fluffy one. After tucking the vixen into his arms, Leighton asked his uncle if he was doing well.
Aristella noticed that Leighton had changed a lot since last time, which was fortunate, and he'd even grown a little. Leighton hugged the fox gently and admitted that he had something to say to her. He was grateful to the fox for saving him, but Aristella only remarked to herself that she should have acted faster.
The girl was pleased by Leighton's gratitude, but at some point, his embrace made it hard for her to breathe. Aristella immediately started to pull away from his grip, ordering the boy to stop hugging her.
Suddenly, Leighton turned to Uncle Henrian, asking if he could take the fox with him to the academy. Aristella was more than surprised at such a question. The boy continued to beg, saying that many people brought their pets to the academy. Aristella didn't understand why Leighton suddenly had such a desire. Aristella continued to glare at Henrian, hoping he wouldn't let Leighton take her with him. Sion sighed heavily, but only replied that he needed to think about it.
Aristella thought Sion was a bastard for not saying no right away. Henrian remarked that the journey had been hard and that Leighton could use some rest. He also asked the boy to let the vixen go. As she watched her uncle and nephew depart, Aristella reflected on the fact that while she hadn't found any clues in the Archduke's magic books, she would hate for Henrian to give her to Leighton.
Aristella was worried because Sion was very attached to Leighton and almost never refused the boy's requests. The girl was afraid that Henrian might send her to the academy at Leighton's request.
While helping Leighton pack his bags, Henrian noted that he was leaving tomorrow and asked his nephew if he was afraid. Leighton frankly admitted that he was a little nervous, but he was very curious about what he would learn there. Gently patting the boy on the head, Henrian noted that even in this he was very much like his parents. Sion assured his nephew that when he went to the academy, he would be able to learn and try many things there. He would be able to fully develop his talent.
That was why Henrian gave the boy a huge stack of different books. He said that they were good books that Leighton should study if he wanted to develop magic. The boy thanked his uncle for the gift and assured him that he would try very hard.
Henrian warned the boy to keep in mind. This magic would give him an almighty power that no one could ever take away from him. Henrian also added that unfortunately he wouldn't be able to give Leighton the fox, which made the boy immediately upset.
Leighton immediately began to persuade his uncle, assuring him that the fox was obedient to him and that he would take good care of it. Henrian noted that his nephew constantly called the fox Fluffy and asked where the name came from.
Leighton noted that the fox has very fluffy fur that looks like a snowball, which is why he named it that. Ott noted that it was very, very cute.
Leighton once again assured his uncle that Fluffy listened to him very well and that she liked the name the boy had given her. He promised that he would really take good care of her, so he asked to let the vixen go to the academy with him.
Henrian, still not entirely sure of his decision, asked again if the lad would really be able to take good care of the fox, to which Leighton zealously replied that yes, absolutely. And this time in her room, Aristella, constantly sneezing, could not understand who it was that was talking about her. She supposed that it was Leighton who was condemning that business.
She remembered how the boy had always chased after her, calling her Fluffy, even though she didn't understand why she deserved such a name. She remembered how happy the boy had been when she'd finally looked at him.
Dipping her paw in the red paint, Aristella decided that Leighton was already pissing her off and she was just reacting to him calling her fluffy. Having written a huge no all over the wall, Aristella decided that now it would definitely get to him. She was sure that Zion would see the message. Aristella jumped up on the bed in surprise. She had fallen asleep without realizing it. It was already morning. While she waited for Xion, she fell into a dream. Noticing that Henrian was nowhere to be found, Aristella wondered where the lad might be. The girl was horrified at the thought that Xion had not noticed her message. She wondered what he would do if she was carried away to the academy. The girl was taken from her thoughts by the inexplicable voice of Henrian, who asked if she was awake. The boy was sitting on the sofa, with his foot on the leg, reading a newspaper. It turned out that the rascal had been keeping an eye on things. Henrian ordered the girl, now that she was awake, to pack up and go to Leighton's. Aristella was horrified when she learnt that the rascal had decided to give her to Leighton. Xion didn't react in any way to Leighton calling her fluff. Besides, there are too many eyes in the academy, so she won't be able to study black magic. Aristella decided that she would have to run away and find another way. Foxy was just sitting on Leighton's suitcases in front of the entrance to the mansion when the boy ran out of the building, immediately flying up to the fuzz and wondering if she had slept well. Leighton remarked that she was very pretty even in the morning. Aristella didn't understand why the boy liked her so much, since she was going to run away from him in the first place. It made her feel guilty. Henrian sternly pointed out that the fox's name was not Fluffy. Leighton replied that she liked that name too and asked if it could be changed. Henrian squinted his eyes at Aristella, wondering if she really liked her new name. She shook her head vigorously, letting him know that she did not. Henrian took the fox in his arms and announced that he had a present for Leighton. Aristella was horrified. She thought that Zion could give her to a boy like that so easily. If that happened, she wouldn't even be able to escape. Henrian asked Leighton to befriend his gift on his way to the academy. Aristella immediately started to pull out of his arms, calling the guy a creep. But no sooner had Aristella slashed the boy's face for saying such words than Henrian stepped aside, introducing Leighton to his puppy who would protect him at the academy. Henrian noted that he would help with many things as a wonderful friend and spiritual guide. Overjoyed, Leighton immediately grabbed the puppy in his arms, thanking his uncle for the wonderful gift. Aristella exhaled in relief, realizing that Zion had decided to keep her. The girl ordered the balloon to befriend Leon, noting that they would make good friends for each other. The puppy smiled contentedly and waved his paw. Aristella couldn't believe that he was actually listening to her. The puppy barked, as if confirming her thoughts. Henrian covered Aristella's face with the palm of his hand, ordering her to stop staring, otherwise she would remain a flake and live the rest of her life with Leighton. Aristella tried to pull away to take another look at the puppy. She needed to check her thought. But then the girl decided that maybe she was just imagining things. When Leighton had had enough of his new friend, he told his uncle that it was time for him to go. Henrian wished his nephew a good journey. Leighton promised that he would study hard and be sure to show off his improved skills next time. Henrian assured him that he would look forward to it. He also asked Leighton to tell him if the boy suddenly needed anything. Henrian invited the boy to come on holiday if he could make it. Leighton liked the idea, and his grandmother had already given him permission. Leighton also said goodbye to the fuzz. Aristella decided that next time she would return to her human form so they would meet as wizards. Luckily, Henrian gave his nephew a pat on the head and wished him a good journey. In a few moments, Leighton's carriage disappeared over the horizon. Henrian remembered how he had told Leighton that he could not give him the fox, for it was very important to him. Zion noted that perhaps the boy did not realize it now, but everything first had significance. He advised him, if he met someone dear, to develop his power to protect them. Now Leighton understood a little of his uncle's words. As he stroked the puppy's wagging tail, he asked him to take care of him, for he was his first friend and part of the family. He would always love and protect him. Aristella was partly sad that Leighton had left. Unexpectedly, Henrian called her Hara, wondering if she liked her new name. Hissing at the boy, Aristella decided that this family had absolutely no sense of names. Henrian decided that such a violent reaction meant she didn't like the name.
As he approached the fox, Henrian whispered in her ear that he couldn't call her Aristella. Could he? Or should he call her that?
Henrian called the fox Hara again, and with tears in her eyes, the girl realized she had to answer.
Rowan was pleased that the fox finally had a name, though he noted that Leighton would be upset about it. Cyan remarked that it was up to the owner to name the animal.
Rowan admitted that he liked the name Fluffy better, but that it wasn't a bad name either. Henrian countered that it wasn't not a bad name, but a good one.
The maids immediately remarked that the name Hara suited the vixen, and they would call her that often from now on. They also remarked that his lordship must really care for Hara. In fact, he doesn't, and Cyan just wanted to tease her.
Anessa approached the fox, raising her hand to high-five her. She asked the vixen to come to her when his grace was away and promised to take good care of her. Aristella realized that she liked to be loved.
Anessa confessed that she liked Hara the foxy girl a lot. Aristella replied that she liked Anessa a lot too.
Aristella was surprised, but being a fox wasn't so bad. While she was a princess, no one liked her. Perhaps it was because she was a fox now.
But the most important thing to Aristella was that Cyan didn't seem to hate her, much to her delight. That bothered her the most.
Henrian ordered that everyone but him should call her Fox. The servants were very surprised and upset. They wanted to call her Hara too.
Henrian sternly remarked that this was because it was his fox. The maids asked if they could think of another name for the fox.
Cyan replied that no names and no nicknames, she should just be called Fox. Aristella noted that she wouldn't mind a nickname. It surprised her that Henrian was rather petty about such things. Hara's name became a secret that only Henrian knew. Even as a young boy, he decided that a name for the fox had to be invented. That's when the name Hara came into being. He decided then that he would keep the secret about this name forever.
He will keep his secret about this most important first time. After all, it was not only a fox, but also a girl. Aristella watched the servants scurry from side to side, checking to make sure they hadn't forgotten anything and that everything was ready. She didn't understand what it was about this special day and why everyone in the mansion was so busy.
One of the girls dropped that time flew so fast, and it was already the anniversary of the founding of the state. Aristella was immediately surprised. The day of the founding of the state. How could she have forgotten about it?
Foundation Day is the most important day in the Empire. The imperial family prepares for it with the greatest effort and magnitude during the whole year, because it is an occasion to praise the endless glory of the Empire of Leonia. Archduke Adelasia, as the representative of the most powerful family in the Empire, was always present at this feast. That means Henrian will also be at the banquet. After all, Cyan, as one of the greatest mages in the Empire, could not miss the celebration of the founding of the state. Aristella decided that this was the perfect opportunity for her.
Cautiously opening the door with her paw, Aristella peeked inside the office, deciding that Henrian must be here. The boy was just sitting at his desk, while Rowan reported to him that he was to attend the banquet for the founding of the Empire.
Skipping inside, Aristella decided that this was as good a time as any. Henrian assured the assistant that he would be present and asked him to check that everything was ready.
Aristella was on the Archduke's desk in one leap, which made Rowena complain about it. The vixen ran up to the boy, tapping him on the shoulder with her paw, letting him know that she had something important to tell him.
Glancing at the fox, Henrian didn't understand why she was looking at him like that. Aristella was upset that Cyan couldn't understand it just from the look in her eyes. Henrian thoughtfully suggested that the girl wanted to go with him. Aristella immediately shook her head, asking him to take her to the banquet in honor of the founding of the empire. It was the palace banquet, she had to go. But Henrian immediately replied that no, for he never took animals to the banquet. Aristella pointed out that she wasn't really an animal. Besides, other nobles often take animals to banquets.
Henrian replied that he still didn't. Aristella objected that he could not do that to her out of the blue, for she had a good reason for going there.
The Azurdi family has been searching for the girl for the past few months, though they never had any special connection or contact with Aristella. If the girl's hunch is correct and they are black mages, they are sure to pull some kind of trick on the day the empire was founded. Aristella had to check it out and, if necessary, stop them somehow.
Besides, her only blood relative, His Majesty the Emperor, would be there. Perhaps Aristella will be able to see her brother.
So she decided that she would go with Sion no matter what. Henrian gave Aristella a surprised look, not understanding how the fox could even make such a face.
Henrian began to worry, and his ominous premonition became a reality. Aristella had been stalking him all day long and pestering him. She left her footprints on important documents, came to his training, interfered with his meals, and just jumped on the guy, forcing him to take her with him. Henrian asked the girl to stop, for it was useless anyway. Whatever she did, the boy wasn't going to take her with him.
Aristella frowned, not knowing what to do with such a stubborn archduke. After a moment's thought, she decided she needed to change her tactics.
Henrian didn't realize what the girl had come up with this time. Jumping into the guy's lap, Aristella decided that the last method was Operation Charm. As a child, Henrian liked his foxy appearance so much that he fell in love with it. So Aristella decided that this time, she would resort to this trick too. The vixen began petting the guy in every way possible. Her intentions were obvious. The girl did not want Henrian to drive her away. Instead, Henrian decided that he just wouldn't pet her. Aristella squinted slyly, deciding that she would see how long the guy would hold out.
After struggling with his urges for a few minutes, Henrian admitted that he had lost, gently stroking the vixen's head. He said the girl could do whatever she wanted.
Aristella was incredibly happy about it. At last she could return to her home, her hometown, her palace. Henrian asked the girl what she wanted, for she had never wanted to go to the banquet at the imperial palace. Sion surmised that there was something else that Aristella wanted.
Aristella noted that the guy was very smart. She needed those who practiced black magic, and this was the most reliable way to identify them. Jumping down from Sion's arms, Aristella decided she couldn't tell him about something she wasn't sure about. Besides, it was dangerous. Either way, the girl was sad that she couldn't communicate with Henrian. Now, if only there was some way. Foxy jumped on the desk, noticing a piece of paper and an ink pen. Aristella thought it might work.
Taking a pen in her paws, Aristella wrote that she needed to pick up something from the princess's palace. After reading the note, Henrian wondered what exactly she needed, that the girl was going to tell it later. Henrian stated that he had a condition for getting her there. Aristella hoped it wasn't something strange. Henrian noticed that the fox understood what he was telling her, but he didn't. All this time, he had only been making quick guesses as to what was going on. Aristella couldn't help noting that he was brilliant at this, because not all humans were capable of it. Henrian's condition, therefore, was to devise a secret signal. He pointed out that in this way, they would be able to go to the banquet with peace of mind if they had in their armory the elementary means of communication. Aristella decided that there was nothing difficult about it. Determined to begin, Henrian ordered Aristella, firstly, to cry in case of emergency.
Aristella was shocked that Henrian would suggest that she cry in case of an emergency. She had never cried in front of others before in her life. Secondly, if you need help, Henrian said to raise your paws like this, turn your head like this, and tilt your tail this way. Aristella decided that the guy was just trying to tease her under the pretext of creating a means of communication. She promised herself that she would slap him later.
There was a knock on the door, and a few seconds later, Rowan entered the room. The aide was greatly surprised, not realizing what they were doing here. Clutching the guy's head, Aristella admitted that she had intended to punch Sion, but was so badly frightened that she rushed to escape on automatic. Henrian informed Rowan that he intended to accompany Haru to the upcoming banquet and ordered the fox to get off him. Rowan wondered if their duke was such a merciful man. A few days later, she looked at herself in the mirror and noticed that she looked better than she had thought she would. She looked gorgeous. She was immediately attracted to her.
The reason why Aristella thought so carefully about her outfit was not only because it was the first time she was visiting her home, the Imperial Palace, in half a year, but also because Aristella had always played an important and valuable role in the day of the founding of the Empire. As the genius of the age, Aristella displayed a magic that even she herself admired, showing the people of the Empire the infinite glory of this power and always illuminating the state at its magnificent peak. Therefore, dressing luxuriously was the order of the day for her. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she thought she was missing something. The maid sitting next to her suggested that the fox should wear another hairpin. Aristella decided that was exactly what she needed. She noted that in Sion's absence, the girl was the only one she had been able to maintain a dialogue with. Hooking the hairpin on the fox's fur, the girl noted that it would look good on this side. The maid noted that it looked very good on the fox and suggested adding some lace to the image. Aristella agreed with that.